the promise. The rain poured heavily that night, hitting the thin roof of their small home like countless pebbles falling from the sky. Sundar lay on his narrow bed, barely able to sleep because of the constant dripping water that seeped through the cracks above. He turned his head and saw his mother moving quietly, placing old pots and metal plates under the leaks. She tried to do it softly so her children wouldn't wake up, but Sundar's eyes followed her. She was tired, her thin sari clinging to her frame, her hair damp from the rain that refused to give her rest. He watched her kneel down, wiping the floor with a cloth that was already soaked, and for a moment he felt a kind of helplessness that burned deep inside him. At that time he was too young to fix anything, too small to carry the weight of his family's struggles. But in that moment, he made himself a silent promise. He would one day give his mother a home where the roof never leaked, where the walls stood strong, where she could sit without worry or shame. It was a promise born out of a child's pain, but it would stay with him for decades, shaping his choices and giving him strength in the hardest moments of his life. His father, a man of few words, worked long hours at the factory, his face always covered with dust and exhaustion. Sundar's mother was the center of the family, the one who stretched every coin until it gave more than it had. She cooked simple meals, often pretending she was full, so her children could eat the last portion of rice. Her dream was never to wear gold or live in luxury. Her dream was simple: a home without cracks, a kitchen without smoke burning her eyes, a place where her children could study without rain dripping onto their books. Years later, as Sundar sat in his glass office overlooking San Francisco, he thought about that night again. He thought about his mother's trembling hands and her tired smile as she reassured him that everything was fine, even though it clearly wasn't. Now, the world knew him as the CEO of Google, a man leading billions of people into the future of technology, but in his heart he was still that boy lying awake in a leaking room, listening to his mother's quiet struggle against the storm. And that boy's promise was still unfulfilled. Success had given him many things: respect, wealth, power, and opportunities beyond imagination, but it had also taken something away. The long meetings, endless flights, and constant responsibility had created distance between him and the woman who had given him everything. Sometimes he would call her and hear her voice still filled with the same warmth as when he was a child, but there was always a part of him that felt guilty. No gift, no phone call, no visit could ever match what she had given him through years of sacrifice. That evening, Sundar sat at his desk long after most people had gone home. The office was quiet, the city lights blinking in the distance. He opened a small box in his drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a letter his mother had written him years ago when he left India to study abroad. The paper was worn, the ink faded, but the words still carried the weight of her heart. "My son," it began, "you are leaving with dreams in your eyes. I pray you always walk with kindness, no matter how high you go. Remember that your strength does not come from what you own, but from what you give." He read those words again and again, and suddenly the idea that had been quietly forming in his mind became clear. It wasn't enough to simply take care of his mother's needs. It wasn't enough to send money or buy her small comforts. He wanted to fulfill that childhood promise in a way that would honor her sacrifices forever. He wanted to give her the home she deserved, the home she had dreamed of in silence. Not just a roof and walls, but a mansion filled with love, memories, and dignity. But even as the thought gave him hope, it also carried fear. His mother was a woman of humility. She never liked unnecessary attention. She often reminded him that true wealth was found in simplicity, in kindness, in family meals, shared at one table. Would she accept such a gift, or would she feel it was too much, a symbol of a world too far from the life she had lived? Sundar pushed the doubt aside for the moment. He believed if he designed it not as a symbol of wealth, but as a symbol of gratitude, she would understand. The next morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky golden, Sundar began to act. He reached out to an architect, a team of designers and people who could turn his vision into reality. But he gave them strict instructions. The mansion must not be built like a palace to impress strangers. It must be built like a heart, every corner carrying a memory from his mother's life. There must be a kitchen designed exactly like the one she once cooked in, but without the smoke and the struggle. There must be a garden filled with the flowers she loved as a girl. There must be a room with books, so she could sit and read in peace, surrounded by stories. His assistant, curious about the sudden secret project, asked him quietly, "Sir, may I ask who this mansion is for?" Sundar smiled faintly and said, "For the woman who taught me that no dream is too small, even if it starts in a leaking room." But the journey was not going to be easy. News of his plan began to spread quietly among family members and old acquaintances. Some whispered that it was too much, that his mother would never step into such a place. Some even said he was doing it for publicity, though he had never planned to reveal it to the world. Sundar listened in silence, but inside, he felt the weight of their words. He knew his mother, he knew her humility, and still, he believed this was the right thing. As weeks passed, Sundar became restless. Every detail of the mansion was a reminder of his childhood, every choice carrying both excitement and fear. He thought about the day she would finally see it, and his heart raced with both joy and dread. And one evening, as he walked through the empty halls of the unfinished mansion, he stopped by a large window that overlooked the garden. The workers had not yet planted the flowers. The walls were still bare, but he could already imagine her standing there, looking out, smiling. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he saw it so clearly. But then he also saw something else. His mother turning away, tears not of joy but of pain. The image shook him. He opened his eyes quickly, breathing heavily, trying to silence the fear that had suddenly grown louder. That night, as he lay in bed, the memory of the leaking roof returned stronger than ever. His promise echoed in his mind, but now it was joined by another question. Would fulfilling his promise bring her happiness, or would it break her heart? He didn't have the answer yet, but he knew one thing. The moment of truth was coming closer, and soon his mother would step into a world she had never imagined. The hidden gift. The morning sun rose gently over the half-built mansion, throwing long golden beams across the scaffolding and unfinished walls. Sundar walked quietly through the site, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble floor that was not yet covered with rugs. The workers greeted him respectfully, but he barely noticed, his mind trapped between pride and doubt. Each brick carried a memory of his childhood. Each window seemed like a reflection of his mother's struggles. He had ordered that nothing be extravagant for the sake of luxury. It had to be personal. It had to breathe her life story. He pointed toward a wall and told the architect, "This one must stay simple, but strong. My mother used to lean against the wall of our old house after a long day, and I want her to feel that same comfort here, only without the cracks." The architect nodded, though he seemed confused. Most clients asked for extravagance, golden trims, imported chandeliers, walls of glass. But Sundar's instructions were different. He wanted warmth, not grandeur. He wanted the mansion to whisper love, not scream wealth. In the evenings, after his work at Google, Sundar spent hours reviewing details, the pattern of tiles, the width of doorways, the flow of air in each room. He remembered how his mother would sit on the floor by the stove, fanning the flames with an old piece of cardboard, smoke curling around her face. He ordered the kitchen to have ventilation so perfect that she would never again wipe tears from her eyes because of smoke. He remembered the way she always grew jasmine in tiny clay pots outside their door. He instructed the gardeners to build a wide garden filled not only with jasmine, but also with roses, marigolds, and the neem tree she used to sit under as a girl. Every detail was born out of memory, and every memory carried both love and sorrow. But, as the mansion slowly took shape, whispers began to travel through family and community. Some relatives living back in India began to call him. At first, they congratulated him, praising his devotion. But slowly, the words changed. "Do you really think she will live there?" one cousin asked. "She is not used to such things. She has lived her whole life simply. Maybe you are doing this more for yourself than for her." Another voice on the phone said, A mansion is beautiful, yes, but will it not embarrass her? She might feel like a stranger inside it. Think carefully, Sundar. These words troubled him deeply. He sat alone in his office one night, staring out at the city lights. Was he being selfish? Was he building this to ease his own guilt, rather than give her joy? For years he had wanted to repay her, but could it be that repayment itself was impossible, that no material gift could match a lifetime of love and sacrifice? He put his head in his hands and memories flooded back. His mother sewing torn clothes late at night. His mother refusing a new sari so she could buy him textbooks. His mother smiling even when she was in pain. No matter how much he gave her, he could never match what she had given him. Still, he whispered to himself, "This is not for me. This is for her. It is the promise I made." But his doubts only grew when he visited her in India a few weeks later. She greeted him with her usual warm smile, the kind that made the years of stress on his face melt away. Her small house was tidy, every corner shining from her endless care. She poured him tea in the same steel cups they had used when he was a child. The aroma filled the room, reminding him of mornings when she would gently wake him before school. As they sat together, she asked him casually, "You look tired these days. Is everything all right? You seem distracted." Her question cut through him. She could sense something, though she had no idea what he was planning. Sundar hesitated, almost tempted to reveal the truth. But he held back. He wanted it to be a surprise, the greatest surprise of her life. "I'm fine, Amma," he said softly, avoiding her eyes. "Just work." She reached out, placing her hand over his. Her skin was rough from years of labor, but her touch carried a warmth no comfort could replace. "Remember, my son," she said, "you don't always need to give the world to someone you love. Sometimes sitting together like this is enough." Her words pierced his heart. He smiled faintly to hide the storm inside him. She had no idea he was already building the world for her, brick by brick. The following weeks became a race against time. Sundar flew back and forth, splitting himself between his duties at Google and his secret project. His team admired his calmness in meetings, his vision for the future, his ability to lead thousands. But none of them knew that in his private hours he was sketching designs for his mother's bedroom, making sure her bed would be placed exactly where the morning sun could reach her face just the way she liked when she used to open their window at dawn. Still, unease followed him like a shadow. There were nights he couldn't sleep, hearing again the doubts of his relatives, the questions of his own heart. What if she refused to stay? What if she looked at the mansion not as love, but as distance? To quiet the storm, he reminded himself of his childhood promise, the leaking roof, the dripping water, her tired hands. He was not giving her luxury. He was giving her safety, dignity, peace. One evening, as he stood in the nearly finished living room, workers placing the final touches on the carved wooden doors, Sundar closed his eyes and imagined the moment. His mother walking inside, seeing the home built with every drop of his gratitude. Would her eyes fill with tears of joy? Would she smile the way she once did when he brought home his first school prize? Or would she turn away, unable to accept it? The fear refused to leave him. His assistant, noticing the weight on his shoulders, finally asked him, "Sir, may I ask something? You have built empires, managed billions, yet I've never seen you this nervous." "Why?" Sundar looked at him quietly, before replying, "Because this is the only empire that truly matters. If I fail here, then nothing else means anything." The words left his assistant stunned. The mansion was finally complete. Chandeliers sparkled, not with excess but with warmth. The jasmine flowers bloomed in the garden, spreading their fragrance through the air. The kitchen stood ready, clean and bright. The walls carried photographs from the past, Sundar as a boy, his father smiling, his mother standing proudly in her plain sari. Everything was prepared, and on the day it was ready, Sundar called his mother. "Amma," he said gently, "I want you to come with me somewhere. It's important." She hesitated on the other end of the line. "Where to, my son? Is it work? Again?" He smiled, though his heart raced. "No. This time it's something else." She agreed without question, as she always had, trusting her son completely. And as he ended the call, Sundar sat back in his chair, his hands trembling slightly. The moment he had prepared for his entire life was now only days away. But deep inside he could not silence one haunting thought. What if she walked into the mansion he had built with love, and found no happiness in it at all? The day arrived with a stillness that felt strange, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Sundar had arranged everything with care, down to the smallest detail. The gardeners had filled the paths with fresh jasmine blossoms, their fragrance drifting gently in the air. Soft lights glowed inside the mansion, casting warmth on the walls that carried the photographs of his family. The staff had been asked to disappear for the day. This moment was meant to be private, intimate, and unforgettable. When the car pulled up outside his mother's small home, Sundar sat quietly in the back seat, watching her step out with the same slow grace she always carried. She wore her plain cotton sari, the one she had mended so many times, and a simple shawl draped over her shoulders. No jewelry, no perfume, no signs of extravagance. Her very presence reminded him of humility, of the simple life she had always chosen. She climbed into the car beside him, her eyes curious but trusting. "Where are we going, my son?" she asked softly. Sundar smiled faintly, hiding the storm inside him. "You'll see, Amma. It's a surprise." She looked at him for a long moment before nodding. "You've been secretive these days. I hope it's not something too grand. You know I don't need much." Those words tightened his chest, but he said nothing, only reaching for her hand and holding it as the car drove toward the mansion. The journey was quiet. Sundar kept looking at her face, memorizing every line, every wrinkle carved by years of sacrifice. His heart raced faster with every passing minute. What if her first reaction was discomfort? What if she refused even to step inside? But he pushed the thoughts away. This was the promise he had carried for decades, and today was the day to fulfill it. When the car stopped at the grand gate, Sundar quickly asked her to close her eyes. "What are you doing, Sundar?" she asked, confused. "Trust me," he said gently. "Please, Amma, just close your eyes." Hesitantly, she obeyed. Sundar guided her out of the car, his hand steadying her every step. He placed a soft blindfold over her eyes, making her laugh, nervously. "You're treating me like a child," she said. He smiled, though his voice trembled. "For today, let me." They walked slowly up the path, the air filled with jasmine fragrance. Sundar's heart pounded like a drum. He had faced global investors, presidents, entire audiences of thousands, and yet nothing had ever shaken him like this. He paused at the door, his hand gripping the key. He turned to look at her, blindfolded, standing there with complete trust in him. And for a second he almost broke down, almost told her to go home, almost abandoned the plan out of fear. But then he remembered the rain dripping through the roof, her tired hands catching water in old pots, and the promise he had made in the silence of childhood. He unlocked the door and slowly pushed it open. "You can open your eyes now," he whispered. She lifted her trembling hands and pulled the blindfold away. The sight before her froze her completely. The mansion stretched wide, with shining floors, tall ceilings, and walls filled with memories carefully placed by her son. The fragrance of jasmine floated in from the garden, mixing with the warm glow of lights. Photographs of her youth, her wedding, her family were arranged with reverence. The kitchen gleamed, designed with care to remove every trace of smoke. The bedroom glowed softly with morning light pouring through wide windows. For a long moment, she said nothing. Sundar, his heart racing, watched her face, waiting for joy, waiting for tears of happiness. Instead, there was only silence. Her hands began to tremble. Her lips quivered. Her eyes filled with tears, not the kind he expected, not tears of delight, but something heavier, something that seemed to crush her from within. "Amma?" Sundar whispered. "Do you like it? This is your home now. I built it for you. For everything you've given me, this is my gift to you." She turned slowly toward him, her eyes shining with pain, and then, In a voice so soft it broke his heart, she said, "Why would you do this to me, Sundar?" The words struck him like lightning. He stood frozen, unable to understand. What do you mean?" he stammered. She looked around the glowing mansion again, her face wet with tears. "This house, this mansion, it feels like a stranger's place. I don't belong here. Why would you think this is what I wanted?" Sundar's chest tightened, his breath shallow. He had imagined countless scenarios, but never this. "Amma, this was my promise," he said, his voice breaking. "I wanted you to have the life you deserved. No leaking roofs, no struggles, no pain, only comfort, only peace." But she shook her head, her tears falling harder now. "Comfort is not found in walls, my son. Peace does not come from marble floors. You think this is a gift, but it feels like you've taken me away from the only world I knew. Your father, our home, the small things we built with our hands. None of them are here. This mansion is beautiful, but it feels empty. It feels cold." Sundar could not speak. He had dreamed of this moment all his life, and instead of joy, it had given him heartbreak. The silence between them grew heavier, broken only by the sound of her quiet sobbing. And then, as Sundar tried to reach for her hand, she stepped back, shaking her head. "I never asked for this, Sundar," she whispered. "All I ever wanted was time with you." Her words cut deeper than any wound, and before Sundar could say anything, before he could explain, before he could hold her and beg her to understand, she turned and began to walk away, her small figure fading toward the door. The heartbreak, the heavy wooden doors of the mansion closed softly behind her, but the sound felt like thunder inside Sundar's chest. He stood motionless, surrounded by the grandeur he had created, yet it suddenly felt like a hollow shell. Every corner, every polished floor, every glowing light seemed meaningless now that his mother's tears had fallen upon them. He had imagined her walking through the halls with wonder, touching the walls, with trembling hands of gratitude, smiling through tears of joy. Instead, her footsteps had echoed with sorrow as she walked away from the very gift he thought would heal all wounds. Sundar followed her quickly, his voice trembling. "Amma, please wait. Listen to me." She stopped at the edge of the garden, her figure small against the backdrop of the glowing mansion. The jasmine flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze, their fragrance mixing with the heaviness in the air. She turned to him, her eyes filled not with anger but with grief. "Sundar," she whispered, "do you know why I cried?" He swallowed hard, his throat dry. Because you didn't want this? Because it's too much?" She shook, her head slowly, the lines on her face deepened by sorrow. "I cried because this house is beautiful, yes, but it feels empty. It has no soul. When I look at these walls, I don't see your father's laughter. I don't see the nights we spent together when you were young. I don't hear your voice calling me from the small kitchen or your footsteps running to me after school. This place is large, grand, but it does not carry the memories that make a home." Her words pierced him like knives. Sundar lowered his head, his hands trembling. "Amma, I thought I was giving you the life you deserved. No struggles, no pain, no rain dripping through the roof." "My son," she said softly, walking closer to him. "A roof that leaks is still a home if it holds the people you love. The little kitchen where I cooked for you, even with smoke burning my eyes, that was my heaven. Because you sat there, with me. What good is a mansion without those moments? You think this house gives me peace, but it only reminds me of what I've lost. It reminds me that time has taken your father, and distance has taken you." Sundar felt his chest tighten until he could barely breathe. He wanted to argue, to tell her that this was his way of honoring her sacrifices. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw the truth. She was not rejecting his love. She was rejecting the idea that love could be measured in marble and chandeliers. They walked in silence toward the garden bench, the same one he had placed there, imagining she would sit and enjoy her mornings. She sat slowly, her hands folded in her lap. Sundar sat beside her, his heart heavy with guilt. "Amma," he whispered, "all my life I wanted to repay you. I saw the sacrifices you made, the nights you went hungry so I could eat. The years you spent working without rest. I thought this would make you happy. I thought this was the way. She reached for his hand, her touch gentle. My son, you don't need to repay me. A mother does not give to be repaid. I never wanted gold, or big houses, or luxuries. What I wanted was you. Your time, your presence, your laughter in my old age. You are the gift life gave me, and sometimes I feel that success has taken you away more than it has given. Sundar looked at her, his throat tight with tears he couldn't hold back. I never meant for success to take me away. I only wanted to make you proud. Her eyes softened, filled with love despite her pain. I am proud, Sundar. I have always been proud. But pride does not keep me company at night. A mansion does not wipe away loneliness. You see these flowers? She gestured toward the jasmine blooming in the garden. I grew them in clay pots, back home watering them every morning. I didn't need acres of gardens because those little flowers bloomed where love lived. Love, Sundar, is what makes a house a home. Not walls, not wealth. The words sank deep into him, each one heavier than the last. He realized then that he had built the mansion for himself as much as for her, to ease his guilt, to fulfill his promise to silence the boy who once lay awake under a leaking roof. But what his mother needed was never marble floors or shining lights. What she needed was the presence of her son, the comfort of his company, the warmth of his voice filling her evenings. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling the leaves. Sundar finally whispered, his voice cracking. Then I have failed you, Amma. I thought I was giving you happiness, but instead, I gave you sorrow. She squeezed his hand gently. You have not failed me, my son. You simply forgot that love is not about building walls, but about sharing moments. I cried not because you gave me too much, but because I feared you were forgetting what truly matters. Her forgiveness, even in her heartbreak, was more painful than her rejection. Sundar turned away, blinking back tears. He had faced boardrooms, critics, and endless challenges. But nothing had ever broken him like this. His mother's quiet truth. And then, before he could gather his words, she stood up, her frail figure illuminated by the soft light of the garden lamps. I need to go back home tonight, she said quietly. The words hit him like a storm. Home? Amma, this is your home now. She shook her head gently. No, Sundar. My home is where my memories are, where your father's voice still lingers in the walls, where I raised you with my own hands. This mansion is beautiful, but it is not mine. I cannot stay here tonight. Sundar stood quickly, his heart pounding. Amma, please. Just one night. Try it and you'll see. But she interrupted, her voice firm though soft. My son, you must understand. Love cannot be forced and comfort cannot be built with money. Let me go back. I need to breathe where I belong. Her words left him paralyzed. He had dreamed of this moment for decades, and now it was unraveling before his eyes. He reached out to stop her, but she turned and began to walk away. Her sari, flowing gently with the night breeze. He stood rooted in place, unable to move, unable to speak, his heart breaking with every step she took toward the gate. And as the doors opened once again, he felt the weight of silence crash upon him. Truth. The mansion stood in silence after his mother left, every room echoing with emptiness. Sundar sat alone in the living room, his head buried in his hands. The glow of the chandeliers above felt harsh, almost mocking. The house that was meant to be filled with laughter now seemed like a giant hollow cage. He replayed the moment again, and again in his mind, her tears, her words, her gentle but firm refusal. No matter how he turned it, he couldn't escape the truth. He had failed. For the first time in years, Sundar felt like the boy he once was, helpless, small, watching his mother fight storms with nothing but her bare hands. Only now, the storm was not rain pouring through a leaking roof, but his own blindness, his inability to understand what she truly needed. The next morning, he flew back to India quietly, without telling anyone. When he arrived at his mother's old house, he saw her sitting on the veranda, sipping tea from her familiar steel cup. She looked peaceful, far more at ease than she had in the mansion. He hesitated before approaching, guilt weighing every step. When she saw him, she smiled faintly as if nothing had happened, as if her rejection had not broken him the night before. "You came back," she said softly. "I had to," Sundar replied, his voice low. "Amma, I don't understand. I built everything for you. I wanted to give you the best life, but you walked away. Tell me, what did I do wrong?" She set her cup down and looked at him with patient eyes, the same eyes that had guided him since childhood. "You didn't do wrong, my son. You just forgot what I always tried to teach you. Life is not measured in walls or wealth. It is measured in the moments we share, in the love we give. When you build something without love inside it, even the most beautiful place feels empty." Her words sank deep, but Sundar still struggled. "But Amma, I promised myself as a child that I would give you a house where the roof never leaked. I carried that promise my whole life. I thought this mansion was the fulfillment of that." She reached out, placing her hand on his cheek. "My son, the roof never mattered. Even when it leaked, we were together. Your promise was never about walls. It was about protecting me, loving me, being there when I needed you. That is the home I dreamed of." Her touch calmed him, but inside Sundar still felt a storm. He wanted to give her something that showed her value, something she could hold on to forever. But how could he if she rejected every material gift? That night, unable to sleep, Sundar wandered through the old house. He touched the cracked walls, the faded photos, the rusted hinges. Every piece of it carried memories. His father fixing, the old fan, his mother cooking late into the night, him studying by the dim light of a lantern. He realized she was right. The home was alive because of love, not bricks. As he opened an old wooden trunk that had been kept in the corner of his parents' room, he found something unexpected. Inside were neatly folded clothes, a few old notebooks, and beneath them a bundle of letters tied with string. His hands shook as he untied the string and opened one of the letters. The handwriting was shaky, but he recognized it immediately. It was his father's. The letter was addressed to his mother. Sundar's eyes blurred as he began to read. "Why? Dearest, I know life has been hard. The roof leaks, the money is short, and you carry more weight than anyone should. Sometimes I worry our son sees too much of our struggle. But I believe in him. I believe that one day he will rise beyond all this. He will carry the strength you have given him, and he will build a world where you no longer need to struggle. But when that day comes, remind him of this. He does not need to give you riches. He does not need to build you palaces. All he must give you is his heart. For his heart is the only home you will ever need." Sundar froze, the letter trembling in his hands. Tears spilled freely down his cheeks, blurring the ink until it bled into the page. His father's words struck him harder than anything he had ever read. The mansion, the marble, the chandeliers. It was never the true promise. The real promise was love, presence, and humility. His father had seen it years ago, and his mother had reminded him again and again. And yet Sundar, blinded by guilt and ambition, had turned that promise into something material. He sat on the floor of the old house, holding the letter against his chest, sobbing quietly. All the success, all the recognition, all the money meant nothing in that moment. The only thing that mattered was the woman in the next room and the truth his father had left behind. When dawn broke, Sundar rose with new clarity. He walked into the veranda where his mother was sitting, watching the sunrise with calm eyes. He knelt before her, holding the letter in his hands. "Amma," he whispered. "I found Appa's words. He wrote that the only gift you ever needed was my heart. I see now that I was blind. I thought I could repay you with walls and floors, but I forgot that the real promise was love." Her eyes softened, tears welling as she reached out to touch the letter. "Your father always understood. And now, so do you." Sundar held her hands tightly, his voice shaking. "Then let me give you the real gift. Not the mansion, not wealth, not empty grandeur. I will give you my time, my love, my presence. I will stay by your side as much as I can. And the mansion, I will turn it into something else. Something that carries love, not emptiness." She tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? Sundar's eyes burned with determination. If the mansion cannot be your home, then let it be a home for those who need one. For families who fight storms like we once did. For mothers who struggle like you did. I will fill it with life, with love, with people who need shelter. That way your sacrifice will become the foundation of many lives, not just mine. His mother's lips trembled, tears streaming silently down her face. She pulled him close, her frail arms wrapping around him. Now you understand, my son. This is the true gift. They stayed like that for a long time, mother and son holding each other as the morning sun washed over them. But even as Sundar felt the weight lift from his heart, a new challenge began to form in his mind. Transforming the mansion would not be easy. It would face criticism, resistance, and questions from the world. Yet for the first time, he felt no fear, because he now knew the truth. The real promise was never about walls. It was about love strong enough to fill them. The real gift, the morning air was crisp when Sundar stood outside the mansion once more. It looked as magnificent as ever, its tall windows gleaming in the sun, the garden blooming with jasmine, the marble steps flawless. Yet now, instead of pride, he looked at it with new eyes. It was no longer a gift for his mother alone. It was a seed waiting to bloom into something bigger, something that could carry the weight of love and sacrifice. Inside his pocket was the letter from his father, folded neatly, its words etched deep into his heart. His heart is the only home you will ever need. Those words echoed with every step he took, guiding him like a compass. Over the next weeks, Sundar began the transformation. He contacted charities, social workers, and organizations that supported struggling families, single mothers and children, who had no roof over their heads. He told them about the mansion, not as a place of luxury, but as a place of refuge. Many were stunned. Sir, are you saying you want to open your mansion to them? For free? Not for free, Sundar replied, softly, for love. It was built for my mother, and now it will carry her heart. Every corner of this place will remind people that dignity belongs to everyone. The news spread quickly, though Sundar had never planned for publicity. Reporters wrote about it. Neighbors spoke about it. Relatives who once criticized him now looked at him with awe, but Sundar paid little attention to the noise. His focus was on the families who would soon step through those doors. The mansion was prepared carefully. Rooms that had once stood silent were filled with beds, tables, books, and toys. The kitchen was stocked with food. The garden was turned into a safe space where children could run freely. Walls that once felt hollow now carried murals painted by volunteers. Scenes of families holding hands, mothers smiling, children laughing. When the first families arrived, Sundar stood quietly at the entrance. He watched as a young mother stepped inside, her arms wrapped tightly around her two children. Their clothes were worn, their eyes uncertain, but as they looked around at the warm lights and safe walls, relief washed over their faces. The children ran toward the garden, their laughter echoing through the halls. The mother, overwhelmed, turned to Sundar with tears in her eyes. We never thought we'd have a place like this, she whispered. Sundar's throat tightened. You deserve more than this, he said softly. But let this be the start. Soon, more families arrived. The mansion began to fill not with silence but with life. The walls that once seemed cold now vibrated with voices, footsteps, and joy. It no longer looked like a monument to wealth. It looked like a home. And on the day his mother returned to see it, Sundar's heart raced faster than it ever had. He wondered if she would accept this, if she would feel the love behind it. She walked slowly through the gates, leaning on his arm. Her eyes scanned the mansion again, but this time, instead of emptiness, she saw children playing in the garden, mothers cooking together in the kitchen, families sitting in the living room sharing meals. Laughter spilled out of every corner. She stopped in the middle of the hall, her eyes filling with tears. Sundar waited anxiously, afraid she might reject it again. But then, she reached for his hand, her voice trembling with emotion. Now, my son, this house has a soul. Now it is a true home. Her words broke him open. Sundar pulled her close, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. I thought giving you walls was enough. But you were right. Love is the only thing that fills them." She smiled through her tears, her frail hand caressing his cheek. "You have not failed me, Sundar. You have given me the greatest gift, knowing that your heart is still the same, that you still remember what matters." Together they walked through the mansion, watching families cook, children study, and laughter echo in every room. And in that moment, Sundar knew the mansion was no longer his. It belonged to love itself. Later that evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold, Sundar sat with his mother on a bench in the garden. The fragrance of jasmine filled the air. Children ran past them, their joy untamed, their voices carrying hope into the twilight. His mother leaned on his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I was young, I dreamed of a house without leaks. I thought that was my greatest dream. But today I see something greater. This house will protect not just me, but many. And that, my son, is the true miracle." Sundar closed his eyes, holding her hand tightly. "Then I finally kept my promise." For a long time they sat in silence, watching the mansion glow softly against the night. No longer empty, no longer cold. It was alive, filled with love, resilience, and dignity. The real gift his mother had always wanted.